It was 11:40 p.m., April 14th, 1912. Vaginak Burat, 25 years old, was asleep in cabin 804. Suddenly, bam! Not a collision. An explosion, coming from deep within the bowels of the ship. The lights flickered and died. 2 Englishmen in the cabin were thrown from their beds. One struck his head, the other broke his arm. Vaginak and his French friend, Moren, scrambled to their feet, grabbed their passports, their money, and fled into the corridor. They didn't know it then, but they would never set foot in that cabin again. And what they heard that night, it wasn't an iceberg. Let's rewind 4 days, April 10th, 1912, Southampton, England. The RMS Titanic, the largest moving object in the world, embarks on her maiden voyage. 882 feet long, 175 feet high. In today's money, a $400 million marvel. Heated swimming pools, a gymnasium, squash courts, 4 restaurants, a library, even a Turkish bath, a 5-star hotel floating on the ocean. But her most defining feature? Safety. A double-bottomed hull, 16 watertight compartments. Even if 4 were flooded, she would remain afloat. The vice president of the White Star Line declared to the public, "This ship is unsinkable." 2,224 souls boarded believing that promise. From tycoons like John Jacob Astor to impoverished immigrants chasing the American dream. Captain Edward Smith, 62 years old, the Commodore of the fleet, was at the helm. Destination, New York. Estimated time, 6 days. They wanted to break a record. They wanted to prove the Titanic wasn't just the biggest, the most expensive, but the fastest. But there was one problem. April in the North Atlantic is iceberg season. April 12th. The first ice warning. Captain Smith read it, nodded, altered the course slightly, but he did not reduce speed. 25 miles per hour, full steam ahead. April 13th, a second warning, then a third, still no reduction in speed. April 14th, 7 more warnings in a single day. The SS Californian, just 23 miles away.
"We are trapped in pack ice. We have stopped. Be careful."
Titanic's wireless operator, Jack Phillips, was swamped. Too many wealthy passengers wanted to send telegrams. He snapped back at the Californian.
"Shut up! I'm busy!"
Words that would haunt history. Later that afternoon, at 2 p.m., Captain Smith received another warning. He handed it to Joseph Bruce Ismay, the chairman of the White Star Line, who was on board. Bruce shoved the paper into his pocket. He didn't show it to anyone. He didn't want to slow down. They had a record to beat. The sun set. Temperatures plummeted below freezing. And that night, there was no moon. Pitch blackness. In the crow's nest, Frederick Fleet sat 100 feet above the water, scanning the horizon for obstacles. The freezing wind whipped his face. His eyes watered. Visibility was poor. And one more thing, he didn't have binoculars. Someone had accidentally left the key to the binocular cabinet back in Southampton. 11:39 p.m. Fleet saw something, a massive black mass, dead ahead. Fleet rang the bell 3 times, sharp.
"Iceberg! Right ahead!"
The telephone rang on the bridge. First Officer William Murdoch answered. His heart pounded. 11:39 and 50 seconds. Murdoch shouted, "Hard a starboard!" simultaneously. "Full speed astern!" This was the first mistake. When you reverse the engines, you lose steering ability. A 46,000-ton vessel moving at 25 miles per hour began to turn, but agonizingly slowly. Quartermaster Robert Hitchens spun the wheel, but in the panic, he turned it the wrong way. 2 precious seconds were wasted before he corrected it. The iceberg loomed larger in the darkness, 600 feet long, 1,000 feet wide, towering as high as the crow's nest. 1.5 million tons of ice. 11:40 p.m. exactly, Titanic made contact, not a head-on collision. A glancing blow. Along the starboard side, beneath the waterline. For 10 seconds, the ice shredded the hull like a giant knife. Small gashes opened up. 6 watertight compartments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 breached. The safety limit was 4. Up on deck, many passengers felt almost nothing, just a slight vibration. Some went outside, watched the iceberg drift by and laughed. A child picked up a chunk of ice that had fallen onto the deck and played with it. But deep inside the ship, the water was pouring in. Captain Smith and the ship's architect, Thomas Andrews, rushed down to inspect the damage. They saw water flooding the mail room, the cargo hold, boiler rooms, 6, 5, 4. Andrews ran the calculations in his head. His face went pale. He turned to Smith. "The ship will sink. In an hour, maybe 2. Smith couldn't believe it. "But she's unsinkable." Andrews shook his head. "She's going down. It is a mathematical certainty." Midnight, 20 minutes after impact. Smith gave the order, "Send the distress signal." Jack Phillips, the operator who told the Californian to shut up, began frantically tapping the key. CQD, CQD, CQ'd. Then SOS, SOS, SOS. One ship answered, the RMS Carpathia, 58 miles away. Carpathia. "We are coming at full speed. Expect us in 4 hours. 4 hours. Andrews said the ship had 2. It wasn't enough. On deck, the crew began lowering the lifeboats. 20 boats, capacity for 178 people. But there were 2,294 souls on board. Smith ordered women and children first, but most passengers refused to believe the danger. The company said it was unsinkable after all. The first boat was lowered at 12:45 a.m., capacity 65, only 28 people were on board. Half the boat empty. They refused to board because they feared the small boat was more dangerous than the giant ship. But not everyone even had the chance to refuse. On the Titanic, class mattered. First class, the wealthiest. Cabins on the highest decks closest to the lifeboats. Second class, the middle class. Cabins amidships. Third class, the poor. The immigrants. Berths deep in the belly of the ship. And here is a fact few realize. Between third class and the upper decks, there were iron gates, locked. Why? American immigration laws, fear of disease. They had to be kept separate. As the ship began to sink, those gates remained locked. Hundreds of steerage passengers surged up the stairwells, banging on the gates, screaming. No one opened them. A few sympathetic stewards unlocked some, but not enough. And it was too late. These people didn't know the way, they didn't speak English, they were lost in a labyrinth of corridors. By the time they reached the boat deck, most of the lifeboats were gone. Survival rates: first class, 62%, second class, 41%, third class, 25%. You didn't die just because the ship sank. You died because you were poor.
1 a.m. The bow plunged deep underwater. The stern began to rise. The massive propellers, 3 stories high, emerged from the sea. Now everyone understood. She was sinking. Chaos erupted. People fought for the last boats. Men dressed as women. Some jumped into boats and were fired upon by officers. The band on deck, 8 musicians, kept playing to keep the panic at bay. They knew they were doomed. There were no boats for them. Yet they played on. Their final song, "Nearer, my God, to thee."
Save us!
2:05 a.m. the last lifeboat was lowered. 1,500 people remained on the ship. Vaginak Burat, the Armenian man from the beginning, looked at his friend Moren. They knew they had 2 choices: stay and die, or jump into the 28-degree water and take a chance. Moren found 2 life jackets.
They jumped. A wave instantly separated them. Morin vanished into the dark. Vaginak was alone in water that felt like liquid fire. His limbs went numb. His strength faded. He lost his life jacket. He was on the verge of blacking out. Then he bumped into a lifeboat. He tried to grab the gunwale, but the people inside pushed him away with oars. "No, we're full. If you climb in, you'll swamp us." Simple logic. Brutal, but true. Vaginak let go. He began to sink. Meanwhile, on the ship, 2:18 a.m., Titanic tilted to a 45-degree angle. The weight of the water in the bow was immense. The steel could not hold. Crack! The ship snapped in two. Between the third and fourth funnels, the bow plummeted immediately. The stern, now unanchored, crashed back into the water, then rose again, bobbing vertically like a cork. Hundreds clung to the railings, slipping, falling into the abyss. Survivor Eva Hart, just 7 years old, recalled, "The most terrible sound was not the ship breaking, it was the screaming. Thousands of voices screaming together in the freezing water." 2:20 a.m., the stern sank. Titanic disappeared beneath the surface. From collision to submersion, 2 hours and 40 minutes. The unsinkable was gone. In the water, 1,500 people fought hypothermia. In freezing water, the human body lasts 15 to 30 minutes, but the Carpathia was still hours away. Those who could swim died, not from drowning, from the cold. Those in the lifeboats heard the cries, but no one rowed back, fearful that desperate swimmers would capsize them. Gradually, the screaming faded into silence. 1,500 voices went quiet. And this is the worst part. They didn't have to die. 23 miles from the Titanic sat another ship, the SS Californian. She had stopped for the night because of the ice. Captain Stanley Lord decided to sleep and wait for daylight. His wireless operator turned off the radio at 11:15 p.m., 25 minutes before Titanic struck the ice. But the crew on the Californian saw the Titanic. They saw the lights, the flares. 8 white rockets shooting into the sky. White rockets mean distress, internationally. The crew reported it to the officers. The officers reported it to Captain Lord. Lord said, "Those aren't distress signals, it's probably the rich having a party. Go to sleep." And he went back to bed. The next morning at 6 a.m., the Californian turned its radio back on. They heard the news. They raced to the scene, but all they found were bodies floating in the water. 23 miles, 30 minutes at full speed. The Californian could have saved all 1,500 people, but Captain Lord thought they were having a party. In the inquiries that followed, Lord was heavily blamed. His career destroyed, his reputation shattered. But 1,500 people were already dead. So who really killed the Titanic? It wasn't the iceberg, it was human error. 7 mistakes. 1, not enough lifeboats. 20 boats for over 2,000 people. Why? The company thought they cluttered the deck. Aesthetics over safety. 2, speed. 7 ice warnings. Still full steam ahead. Why? Bruce Ismay wanted a record. Corporate pressure. 3, no binoculars. A lost key in Southampton meant the lookouts were effectively blind. If Fleet had binoculars, he might have seen the ice 30 seconds sooner, enough to turn. 4, steering the wrong way. Murdoch called hard a starboard, but in the panic, Hitchens turned the wheel the wrong way, wasting precious seconds. 5, reversing the engines. Murdoch ordered full speed Aston. This killed the steering. If they had maintained speed, they might have turned sharply enough. 6, flawed design. The bulkheads didn't go high enough. Water spilled from one compartment to the next, like an ice cube tray. 7. The Californian. We know that story. Every single mistake was avoidable. If just one of these hadn't happened, 1/50,000 people might have lived. But let's return to the beginning. Vaginak Burat, the Armenian survivor, claimed he heard an explosion. Not a collision, an explosion. And he wasn't the only one. Many other survivors reported hearing a blast from deep within the ship. So what exploded? One theory, a coal fire. There is evidence that coal in the bunkers was burning before the ship even left port. Coal fires in steamships are notoriously hard to extinguish. The heat is intense. It can weaken steel. Supporters of this theory point to photos of Titanic leaving port, showing a large dark smudge on the hull. They say it was evidence of the fire. If the steel was already weakened by heat, the collision with the ice would have caused catastrophic failure much faster. And if the fire caused a pressure tank or steam pipe to burst, that could be the explosion Vaginak heard. Theory 2, a German U-boat. Some claim a U-boat fired a torpedo. They say survivors saw a searchlight from another vessel after Titanic sank. But this theory doesn't hold water. 1912 was peacetime. Germany had no reason to attack. U-boats couldn't travel that far then. And hitting a moving target at night in 1912, impossible. The truth? Likely a combination. The iceberg plus fire-weakened steel plus bad design are the perfect disaster. The explosion Vaginak heard was likely the boilers bursting as freezing water hit the superheated engines. We will never know for sure. But what of Vaginak Burat? Did he die in the freezing water? No. He woke up on the Carpathia, a splitting headache, double vision, but alive. He remembered nothing. Someone had saved him. But who? The next afternoon, a woman walked into the hospital ward, about 50 years old, weeping. "Oh, my dear boy," it was Mrs. Astor, she explained. The lifeboat Vaginak tried to grab didn't leave him. Mrs. Astor had told the sailors, "That is my son. I just lost my husband on the Titanic. I will not lose my son." They pulled Vaginak aboard. She saved his life with a lie. She had kept his passport and money. She invited him to visit when he recovered. Vaginak reunited with his family in Boston. He even received the books he intended to sell. They had been shipped on a different vessel. He lived a long, happy life. And he told this story many times.
He always mentioned the explosion. He never mentioned the iceberg.
That is the story of how the Titanic really sank. And it wasn't just the ice, it was a chain of human failure. Stay tuned for the next video.